What's up, guys? All right, so, I talk a lot about forgiveness and unforgiveness, and something that I hear a lot just talking with people, or something that deep down we want to believe is true, but it's not. And you've probably heard this before, is that forgiveness doesn't come from feeling like forgiving someone, right? Forgiveness is a choice. It's not a feeling, nor is it an emotion, right? Because forgiveness, right, if you want to think of it from a different perspective, is canceling a debt, right? We see that from the parable of the unforgiving servant, where the master forgives the debt of the servant. And then that servant turns around and doesn't forgive the debt of another servant of something that was pennies compared to what he was forgiven from his master. So it's forgiving a debt. Now, forgiving a debt isn't an emotional decision. It's just a decision. It's a choice you make to do or you don't do it. Now, what's very interesting, though, is that typically when you have something traumatic that you go through at the hands of somebody else or a group of people or an organization or whatever it is, right? Usually the conclusion of what you walked away with from what happened is actually the emotions you're feeling when thinking about stepping into forgiveness. For example, if you were a child and the way you were treated by parents or relatives or friends or siblings was that you walked away from that feeling unwanted and unlovable. And then through life, you started to believe that that's actually true. So every time you think about that person or that group and the way you made you feel, right, it's from that feeling and that conclusion of that false identity, that false lie that you're unlovable and you're unwanted, right? Now, it's really hard to also love yourself if you believe that's true deep down, or you're afraid that that's true deep down and you spend a lot of time trying to not feel that way, to distract yourself from that, to try and prove that that's wrong by something that's external, though the problem is internal. It's the false identity. And so actually addressing the lie from the conclusion of that trauma that you walked away with is like the catalyst to finally step into forgiveness toward that person. Because one, if you think you're unlovable and unwanted, it's really hard to love yourself, right? So if you don't have self-love, well, what's the opposite of that? Typically self-hatred. And how on earth is anyone supposed to step into forgiveness with it, which is an act of love, right? If you hate yourself, deep down, self-hatred, right? Because it's really hard to love, right? Something that's unlovable and unwanted. So dealing with those feelings that point back to a false identity and a lie that you believe is true about yourself is actually the answer and the pathway to experiencing self-love, for seeing yourself the way God created you to be and what he redeemed. And then from there, being able to step into forgiveness toward that other person, because you can see yourself clearly now and you can finally start seeing them clearly as well.